All right, we're live. Today, we have the opportunity to reinvent ourselves a little bit. I'm coming in with a new haircut. Kelly's coming on to Accounting Flow for the first time. If you haven't come across Kelly's podcast, Kelly, could you share just real quick before we dive into you and who you are, what you do, what your podcast is? Because I admire what you do so much on that front.
Absolutely. So, myself and Bilal Mahana, a fellow CPA, started a podcast about a year ago now. We launched November of 2023. It's called From Zero to Millions, Accounting Edition. And our mission is to inspire other accountants, show what people are doing, what they're building from scratch, how they're, buying firms, how they're developing, like so many different experiences have been shared and echoed, and it's just a great place to bring people together.
I love it. I think you guys put out some great content, and I had the opportunity to step on that podcast a few months ago. So now the turntables, and now you're on Accounting Flow. So I get to interview you, which is going to be super fun. We're going to talk about your journey. You know how you stepped away from an accounting firm and built your own practice and started thriving, and then bringing team members on board. Before we do that, I'm going to share a little bit about Kelly and Kelly's background here. And so feel free to correct me anywhere that I may make a mistake or miss something. But Kelly is a top 50 woman in business on Long Island, the longest island in New York. 2022 Premier Businesswoman of Long Island, and a top 50 women in accounting nomination through Ignition. And last but not least, a top 40 under 40 CPA. And you are also the founder of Kelly Rohrs CPA, and have been doing that for almost 5 years now. What did I miss? Anything else you'd highlight?
Mom. I am a mother of
I
two young
love that.
kids.
Oh,
I usually lead with mom, business owner, tax strategist, or something like that. So always got to make sure people know my first priority.
oh, I love that so much. We've had so many good conversations on Accounting Flow about people's lives and what they do, and how what they're trying to build from a firm perspective, the workflows, the processes they're trying to introduce are really just a means to fulfill their personal lives more intentionally. And so I love that you add that. How old are your kiddos?
I have a almost 4-year-old. My son will be 4 next month, and my daughter is just about 15 months.
15 months. So you are in the thick of it.
Yes, me and my husband say that often.
Yeah. Oh man, I can relate to that. Very similar ages on my side of the household too. Okay, so let's dive in kind of pre-firm starting for you. You were in a tax associate, tax senior, and then tax manager role. Now, I couldn't tell. Was it at the same firm throughout those years? Okay.
Yeah. So, I didn't have a straight path to accounting. This wasn't something I was like, in high school, like I'm going to go be a CPA. That I just loved numbers. And I also loved being a business owner. I was always hustling, like going to sell handmade purses that I made out of old jeans in middle school to kids at school, or, did the babysitting thing with flyers around town and tutoring. And, I really wanted to be a math teacher for a while. And that's what I initially went to college for. And I ended up dropping out of school, had to deal with personal life issues,
Sure.
as many of us do, or and I took a break. I was working at this local like catering deli spot, and one of my old bosses actually was a patron there, and we had built up this rapport after a while, and I said, "Oh, you're going to have to hire me one day." I was actually going back to school for actuarial science. And we joked around, and he's like, "Oh, well, like, here's my information." I'm like, yeah, like, whatever. And then get a call an hour later, and he's like, "I want you to come to my office." And the next day I was hired
Okay. What were you hired for?
for like a staff accounting position
With no experience.
with no experience. And that was basically, the rest is history. Like, I decided to pivot, to go back to school for accounting. And I basically was there for 10 years. And
Wow.
it's hard to decipher if I was at the same firm, because the
Yeah.
firm changed names multiple times,
Sure.
like many firms do, especially small firms with different ownership structures and what have you. And, it was like an older, guy situation where he didn't really want to retire. And then somebody, this like push pull kind of thing. And from day one, they knew that I had it in me. They were like, you're going to be partner here. We're going to do this. And unfortunately didn't work out that way, but
Yeah.
fortunately I'm so grateful for all of my experience, and I'm
Yeah.
still friendly with both of the owners. And I was there for 10 years.
Mhm.
I was like, my son was like 9 months old, and it was just time for me to leave. And I
Yeah.
had been putting things in place for a while, like building up my personal brand as Kelly
Mm.
Rohrs on social media. And from there, I quit June 2021, and now I'm here.
Wow. And so okay, at that firm, at first, let me back up. You came in with zero accounting experience. Was there a really good training mechanism or path to get your CPA? Like, how did you advance your own personal education through that experience working at a smaller firm?
Good question. I went to school full time.
Oh,
I
wow.
worked full time. I just threw myself into it, and I am a self starter naturally. So I picked up on things really easily. Obviously, I was good with numbers. I had, background in several other business ventures that I had
Mm.
pursued myself. So, no, there was very minimal structure. I mean,
Yeah.
we literally, I kid you not, there was general ledger paper.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. This is only like 15 years ago.
Don't date yourself.
It was like I really was bringing in all of these new things because I was out there exploring, going to different conferences, seeing what people were doing on social
Mm.
media. And there was actually a lot of resistance to that, which is another one of the
Yeah.
reasons why I needed to graduate and move on.
Yeah. And you mentioned you started building a personal brand at this small firm for yourself. Was there a point in time or something that you saw online or at a conference maybe that you said, "Okay, I need to lean into this and start creating some content and start building a profile for my personal brand." Like, how did that start?
So I guess like 2017, 2018, I started going to more conferences. I think it was after like one of the New York City accounting and tax conferences. There was like a pop up that they only did several years ago. I'm not even sure the name of it.
Hmm.
And I had seen people doing things online, and I'm like, well, this is the future. Social media is the future. But like, how do I even do this? I'm a staff member at a firm.
Hmm.
I don't really have approval per se to like have a social media budget
Hmm.
or like be advertising for the firm. So like, how do I deal with this gray area of promoting Kelly Rohrs? And it really just was this natural thing to share my thoughts and share what I see out there. It doesn't have to be, nor should it be, maybe just sales pitching. It's not all
Yeah.
about like selling the name of the firm and the services that we're offering. It's like, let's talk about ideas. Let's talk about situations that happened. And it became a little funny, like trying to get business like that. But
Sure.
because I didn't at the beginning, um, I never really have. And
Hmm.
I never really said like, hey, I'm pushing people to like, DM cold sales
Right.
information. And I think that's probably what has helped me the most
Hmm.
in building this practice.
Yeah. Okay, so you realize that there's value in building out that personal brand, whether or not you were at another firm or building your own. How did that help instill the confidence for you to, when the time was right, say, "Okay, I think I want to take a stab at this and start my own practice"?
I think it was about connecting with other firm owners
Hmm.
and other successful firm owners that went out on their own and took that leap of faith. And, I started building this community throughout the country.
Mm.
People you've never met before all of a sudden become your close friends. And those are the people that really you can lean on who
Yeah.
have been through it. And I remember, like, before starting my firm, I decided to take phone calls with, some people who had either just started a firm or maybe were potential for me to go work for. Like, I remember I interviewed with Chase Berkey.
Yeah.
I actually had interviewed with Bilal. I had a call with Martin Mull. Like, I was like trying to get in front of as many people as I could to like see their take and see what was out there. And then that was like, that gave me the confidence. I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this.
Mm.
I can do this.
Yeah. And you had that kind of entrepreneurial spirit in you from childhood, it sounds like, just hustling your way through kind of lemonade stand type activities. And so you kind of had that fire burning inside of you. So when you build the community, you build these connections, you had the confidence, building a personal brand. What was your first step? Like day one, you register a CPA firm, and then what? Like, did you just get a bunch of clients that came in, you were good to go, or how did that process happen for you?
So I guess, I had my company set up for maybe 2 years before I decided to take that leap, because I knew whether I was going to be a partner in this firm or I was going to maybe purchase a firm. I wanted to have
Mm.
like the bones in place. So you can
Yeah.
start putting things into motion without figuring it out. Like, it's easy to set up a company and have something ready to go, so to speak, especially in somewhere like New York where you have to wait for it to be approved by the state education department. You want to make sure you give yourself that time.
Yeah.
I had also been in the works of like setting up my own website and, over the years, connecting with people on social media, not really like necessarily going out there and doing BNI meetings and, doing the whole marketing thing, but planting seeds
Yeah.
over time. So once I did go out on my own, it was like, I need to tell people I'm
Yeah.
going out on my own. Please send me business. You have to ask,
Yeah.
don't be shy and be genuine. So I've had these genuine relationships with people already. Then it becomes easier for them to trust you in order for them to refer business to you.
Yeah. And so in those first few months, you're kind of on this path of trying to gain new clients, bring them into your services realm. It's just you at that point in time. Did you focus on a specific niche or industry or size of company or type of return at first?
So, from my previous experience, we specialized in medical, dental, professional service space. So, when I did go out on my own, I thought, what, I'm going to have a dental focus.
Mm.
And just due to the nature of the referral relationships that I did have, all of a sudden I started getting a lot of attorneys.
Hmm.
And I had experience in that space. So actually over half of my clients now are attorneys, but everyone is pretty much in professional services, financial advisors, real estate, medical professionals. And I didn't necessarily, choose it. It was what I was leaning towards. It was what my
Yeah.
experience was
Hmm.
in. And it just kind of came about organically with being in touch with other people who are going to refer me this specific client type.
Yeah, that's great. I like the focus on having a core industry that you serve, because that just creates a lot more consistency for you on the back end. But then again, when it's just you, you house all of the knowledge of your clients and what's happening and all the movements in your head. And it's really difficult to transition that to a very process oriented approach to then scale a practice. How did you manage that starting out at the gates? Did you have a communication system or workflow management system, or like how did you manage just the first 6 months to a year of the business?
Good question. So, I knew I needed certain things and certain software that was going to integrate with each other and
Hmm.
streamline things. So, I did set up, uh, my own workflow. Being solo, you do allow things to get a little messier. I
Oh yeah.
think, like, there's no accountability. People don't need to figure out what's going on in your head. But I had, made sure I set up my tax program that I was using before and hosted it remotely, made
Mm,
sure I had an IT team who would help me set up everything the right way.
yeah,
I was doing a lot more notes, handwritten notes.
sure.
I would say I have graduated since then. But Microsoft To Do actually is an amazing system that's free that I feel like people don't really know about. That can really help that system. But formal practice management wasn't really going on then. Yes, we had our
Okay.
list of clients in QuickBooks Online. We were using Smart Vault, but it really was a lot of stuff that was up in my head in terms of to-do list, and it doesn't really work like that in the long term. It doesn't work
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. It's interesting to me that most solo firm owners, I would say, either want to stay solo and love the freedom and flexibility that that comes with. However, there's a number that are at that stage and then want to grow and accelerate and bring on a team. Now, in both circumstances, housing all of that knowledge in your head can be really detrimental to your own efficiency, your own time, and then your scalability. And so there just really haven't been great tools to do that. But I suspect if you wanted to stay solo, by implementing something and thinking about the things that would enable you to spend more time with your kids, you would want to get something like that in place as early as possible. It would also expand your capacity to be able to serve more clients and increase your revenue if you wanted to. And so, at what point in time did you say, "Hey, I need to get this information out of my head into a system in order to then bring on team members?" Because I believe you said you have 4 team members today, besides yourself.
Yep, that's correct. So I'd say about a year in is when I hired my first full-time team member, and I wasn't necessarily like at I wasn't in dire straits. I
Yeah.
knew that the employee may have capacity, but I thought I need to hire before I get too busy because I knew that the referrals were coming in hot.
Yeah.
So, I think talking about some of the systems before, like adding Excel in there, adding some other things, trying to test things out like Trello or Asana or, a formal practice management didn't really come until like a year and a half in.
Mm.
And that's when I started implementing Textome.
Yeah. Yeah,
But,
that's great.
unfortunately, I think there's no like one size fits all. So we still, utilize multiple softwares in order to
Yeah.
track everything. But
Which
we're in
is
a much different place today. And
yeah.
we're still like working on projects on the business. Like, I think it just has to be a constant upgrade and analysis of where you're at because there's so many new programs that are coming out and there's different needs as you develop, different services and, it's always developing.
It is. It is constant in that early growth stage. Now, I'm kind of intrigued because, you brought on this first team member, you started to step into the realm of bringing on a system to help manage the workload. Did you hire high level individual? Did you hire entry level? Like, how did you determine where you should start hiring in the stack based on the services you were providing?
I actually hired another CPA.
Okay. And where did they were they at, like, manager level or
They were probably a little bit lower than a manager level. But I I thought I need somebody kind of like me. I know I can't duplicate myself, but I need somebody who's going to be able to handle, some of this higher level work. It wasn't, an assistant wasn't coming into my mind. I mean, I probably had my mom working for me at that point too, like doing some smaller tasks to pick up. My mom is one of my 4 staff members now,
nice.
so can't recall if how early I had her working for me, but like, that's probably one of the first things that can help alleviate the pressure for, early stage firm owners.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's always hard to determine, based on cash flow coming in the business, based on the responsibilities that need to be met by a team, where to hire. I took the approach of hiring high level first, and that's an expensive hire. And I did that through the lens of I don't want to have to be constantly managing, overseeing, reviewing all of the work, and would like more support at that level that's capable of reaching downward if need be. But it's so hard to know what that first step should be if you want to go that direction.
Especially if you start getting a taste of like, oh, okay, like I've replaced my salary now and things are good and
Mhm.
I'm comfortable or whatever the case is. And then you're like, this big bill comes through and you really have to have a vision of
Yeah.
what's going to happen next because this is an investment. Yeah, it is going to cost you on your cash flow, but will your life be easier? I think people lose sight of that.
Yeah. I think it's a good lens to look at all decision making through, and there's a variety of factors that go into that, right? Will my life be easier because my workload and stress is reduced? Will my life be easier because I have more time to dedicate to the hobbies and people in my life that I love? Or will my life be easier just because I now have team members to support that workload? There's a lot of things that go into that, but I love that decision making framework of like, will this make my life easier? Have you always kind of looked at your firm through that lens?
I think that I look at life through that lens, like what, and I don't know if easier is the exact word either, like that I
Yeah.
would choose. It's like, what can I do that's more efficient? What is going to be better for the greater good of the company, for my family? Like if I have more time, maybe I can, from doing client work, I can work more on the business and the vision of the business and see
Mm.
what's next. Like people fall, short of that all the time. And in terms of my own life, what's going to be better for my kids? Yeah, I have two young kids. So I have the ability now to drop them off at a babysitter from 7:45 to 2:45 and still spend the rest of the day before they
Yeah.
go to bed, with this quality time. And I think a lot of people stuck in the public accounting grind are not getting that.
Not at all. Not at all. I think you're starting to see a shift in culture forward firms put hours restrictions in place, make sure that the health of their staff, the well-being of their team is really taken care of. But even at the larger firms, you're not going to see that shift for many, many years, if at all. Particularly
Yeah,
with private equity coming in, there's a lot more pressures and incentivization to just pound more money to the bottom line, and you just don't see that. Like these folks that you mentioned in the accounting circles that you and I are both very good friends with, you don't see that at all. You see it's very life forward, it's very culture forward, and I've modeled a lot after the people that I've learned from in the space, just like it sounds like you have.
exactly. You have to see what else is out there. And that's the beauty of having conversations like this
Yeah.
live on social media. Like, open your eyes. It doesn't have to be that bad. People are doing it. So there's no reason you can't do it too.
Yeah. Now let's take a quick refrain from all the good and happy and talk for a second about the challenges. Because I know in the business building process, it's never a hockey stick straight up and to the right. It comes with its challenges. In those early days before you brought on a first employee, what were some of those things that just really like kept you up at night and you just kind of toiled over? What were some of those things?
Good question. As much as I say, we have flexibility in our time, there are certain things. It's like you are the business owner, you wear that hat. So, like, not to say that I don't have many nights where I'm doing work after my kids, go to sleep and I have
Sure.
to catch up and do this before a meeting or whatever the case. And, now it's much more few and far between than it was back at the beginning. But even just taking on the right clients, and especially at the beginning, right? You need money to come in the door. I had some money saved up, but it's not like, I live on Long Island, people. This is one of the most expensive places in the world. So um I actually fired one of the biggest client that I had. I guess I was probably like a year in,
Mm,
and it was like a $40,000 a year client. It was a referral from another client and another referral source for me. And it was just eating at me. The fee wasn't right. The fee should have probably been double. I was putting so much time and energy into it. And there were some ethical questions in regards to what the client was doing or
mm,
participating in. And I knew it wasn't a good fit, but it was probably the most difficult decision that I had to make at the beginning. And it was so freeing afterwards, like realizing that you can get rid of one of your biggest clients and then replacing that client so quickly with people who genuinely appreciate you and are billed at the right manner was a great learning experience, but sure gave me a lot of stress.
Yeah, man, you cannot understate the importance of working with the types of clients that make the most sense for you, and it's different for everybody. But that can easily make or break the firm. Can certainly relate to that. So we've got, I don't know, 10 minutes or so left here. We've got a number of people watching live online. Feel free to drop a comment in the chat if you have any questions for Kelly. We're happy to answer any questions live here. We'll have a quick live reaction to some posts that have happened on Tax Twitter or otherwise. We'll do that here shortly. So let's fast forward a little bit to today and what the future looks like for you, Kelly. So today you have 4 team members on staff. Are you at where you thought you would be, almost 5 years ago now, or are you ahead, or are you like right exactly squarely where you should be today?
It amazes me to look back. I know 5 years ago, if you would have asked me where I was at the same old firm, doing the same old thing, like probably being pissed off that things weren't going the way that I wanted them to be, not advancing with technology. So I could never imagine that I'm basically living my dream right now. I'm so fortunate. I cannot believe that, not only did I start this business with a child under one, but I also created a human being and I now have another one. And, the growth I think that has happened in the first 3 years was just unbelievable. I think that the next set of growth, or like the next portion of this business, is going to be more work, because you really have to put in the work in order to continue to be efficient, continue to grow with staff, continue to grow with the right referrals. Like now we've built something and it needs to be, groomed and trimmed, and like we need to work a lot on the business moving forward. And I can't even imagine, like my husband, like you said at the beginning, we're in the thick of it. So we say that all the time. Can you imagine like in 5 years when we are not dealing with crying sick children all the time? Like, it's hard. We're not getting a lot of sleep, but we've built this beautiful, beautiful business and beautiful presence. So
Yeah.
I think it can only be amazing things from here on out.
Yeah. Well, kudos to you for doing that, because that is not an easy journey. But I'm a firm believer that those that have that burning spirit inside of them to build something, to put all their energy into it with the time that they choose to put into it, yield much success. And there's no good time for building any business. Like there's never a good time. There's never enough money. There's always something in your life going on. And so I always recommend people, hey, if you've got just a skosh of that desire to do something, dive in. Just do it now. Start building that social presence, build content, just like start moving that direction. Because if you don't, that might be one of the regrets that you have later on in life. And so it doesn't turn out, completely like roses like it has for you, for everybody. But what a great testament to, powering through this challenging time in life with little ones and building a business. That's super inspiring to me.
Thank you.
Why don't we jump into some live reaction here on some tax Twitter things? How do you feel
Okay.
about that?
That
Are
sounds
you are you active in tax Twitter?
I am not, but I have a little FOMO actually, because it's like such a click
I
on the
know.
on the text Twitter.
Yeah, they had their retreat in Chicago a few weeks ago in conjunction with Bridging the Gap, and I think
Mhm.
100 people or something came in that met online and joined forces in Chicago. Super cool to
So
see.
cool.
Um, well, let me share my screen here, and I'll pop a comment up for you.
Okay.
All right. So we've got Mara Alexander here that says that moment when it's clear that the client actually never read the engagement letter that they just signed 2 weeks ago. Does this resonate?
I mean, I don't know if people really read these 8 to 13 page engagement letter. If your engagement letter is a one pager, you better go back to your attorney or your insurance company because it's not happening in one page. Okay. But yeah,
So true.
these people probably are not. But this is why we get one for every single client.
Yep, it's true. And it happens all the time. What I like to do in this circumstance is say, like, in the proposal email or in conversation, say, hey, here are the 5 things that you really need to know when reviewing this engagement letter. The rest of it might be boilerplate, but here's the 5 things you need to know, just so that they're aware of those things that they shouldn't be asking about 2 weeks later.
Love that.
All right. Stephanie S., when a new to you client opens with, I've been a bad boy, that's not a good sign, correct?
Now, this is funny because sometimes people think like, oh my gosh, I got a letter from the IRS. I'm in trouble. Like, you got it both ways because you got to lay people down and say, hey, you know what? It's not that bad. This is fixable. But this I've been a bad boy thing also kind of sounds like I haven't filed tax returns in 5 years. Then yeah, you're a bad boy. It's going to cost you. And yeah.
There's a significant underestimation of how being a bad boy can affect the rates that you may have in working with a new provider.
Yeah.
And that always comes at a surprise. It's like, oh, I just haven't filed for 3 years. Not that bad, right? It's like, well, let's talk about that. All right. Steven, I wonder what part of don't send us picture files, send us PDFs you don't understand.
Can I just tell you, right before I got on this live stream, I was on the phone with the IRS and I had a power of attorney and the client sent it to me in a JPEG. It was kind of dark, but I was like, I think I can make this work. And after 45 minutes of being on the phone, and I used Q, okay, it got denied because of this stupid JPEG that was super dark. So I just sent this exact tweet to my client.
It's 2024 and like we're all professionals here. If you're hiring a professional CPA accountant, if you're hiring Kelly to do your work, like, come on, send some PDFs. We don't want pictures.
Yeah.
All right, Albert, is there another profession that has to constantly defend its value and pricing the way accountants have to? Remember, folks, taxes are one of the biggest expenses you will pay in your lifetime. Do you really want to nickel and dime the advisor you chose to work with?
I mean, just heavy sigh.
Yeah.
Heavy sigh. I can't.
It's so true. It's so true.
I agree, Albert.
I recently sent out some pricing adjustment emails, and a response that I got back was something to the effect of, well, I can get this price from Pilot that's a lot cheaper than what you're doing. And I'm like, yeah, you can. That's a very different service. In fact, it's not a service, it's a product. But it's just this constant having to defend the pricing. And the hard part is, though, is that as providers, as advisors, we should be demonstrating that value, and that value should be felt. So if there's mismatch between price and value, there may be some more introspection.
I
that needs
mean,
to happen.
another one that I just addressed today, a client who came to me and ended up leaving, going to somebody cheaper. She started a business. They told her to do a corporation in New York City. She's going to be in for it for thousands of dollars before she can close this thing down. If she would have asked me one question, it literally would have saved her thousands of dollars. So now somebody was cheaper, and now you're going to have to pay the bill anyway, and it's going to be higher.
Yep. Yeah. Cheap often results in more expensive later. This is very true. All right. We got 2 more here. So Luca Pacchioli, the father of accounting, started telling my clients their returns are in quality review, which really just means I can't get the partner to look at them.
Love it. I do the same thing. They're in the review process, which just means it's sitting here until I can get to it.
Deflect. Now, in a big firm, that might actually be true because the partners don't have time because they're stretched too thin and work too much. All right, last one here. Mr. Luke Templin, would you become an accountant again if you could start over? Why or why not?
100%. I love this. I love helping people. This is a really secure job right now. No matter how advanced AI is going to get, people need accounting and tax relationships as business owners, as individuals. I mean, the tax code ain't getting simpler, people.
No, it is not getting simpler, nor is AI going to replace an individual that not only knows the trade and is an expert in the trade, but also can translate that to your business and your goals and your direction. There is some context you can layer into AI to help with some of that, but it's just not going to replace the creativity and the ability to connect those unforeseen dots. I would absolutely become an accountant again as well. All right, you survived the rapid fire tax Twitter round. Kelly, I know that you are very visible on LinkedIn. You have the podcast that you shared. If people want to get a hold of you, is LinkedIn the best place? How should people find you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is a great place to find me. Send me a DM, although sometimes those do get a little crazy. Sure, you know. So email, you can check out. I also have another website for CPAs. It's called fiscalminds.com. We run a free mastermind now on a monthly basis, and we are going to be launching something new and shiny come October. So stay tuned.
Ooh, you said Fiscal Minds?
Fiscal Minds. Yeah.
Fiscalminds.com. Check that out. Keep an eye out for the launch in October. I'm sure you will share that on LinkedIn as well. So give Kelly Rohrs CPA a follow on LinkedIn. And as we had a lot of conversation today about early firm growth, starting a firm, jumping into workflow and practice management, hiring people, Financial Sense did release their solo plan recently, which is phenomenal for folks coming out and starting on their own. $9 a month for a fully embedded, full featured workflow management tool specific for accountants. So I've got to give that a plug because like to have that as an opportunity is phenomenal and at a very low cost for solopreneurs.
Of
So
course. Of course.
Kelly, thank you so much for the time. I thoroughly enjoy having conversation with you and seeing you at events. So hopefully I'll catch you at an event here soon.
Likewise. This was lovely.